All right, guys, welcome back to Let the Journey Begin. I am your host, Jason Waller, alongside my co-host today, Alex Meschi. How you doing, bro?
Good. Very excited coming back from the weekend here.
Yeah?
We had a big announcement this Saturday.
What's that?
We unveiled our 3-person, 90-day, $100,000 scholarship at the Purpose of Recovery rally in Garden Grove.
That's what I'm talking about. That's a big deal right there. That's huge. Talk about that real quick. How can people
Yeah,
get engaged?
No, it is huge. Thanks to the generous contribution from the Sow Family Foundation, they contributed $100,000 for us to find 3 people looking to turn a new leaf and enter into recovery with a 90-day support program, starting with 30 days of detox residential to stabilize the client, all the way down to PHP IOP for 60 days, depending on the client's needs. But for those that are interested in this opportunity, the best place to look is our website or our social media. Our website has the application if you're interested in applying. And just for those that are interested, one thing I will clue you in that isn't on our website, but we're happy to redirect and provide more information. But there is a sober living scholarship available through the Purpose of Recovery as well.
Awesome.
So those things in tandem on top of the recovery advocates from the Purpose of Recovery helping to support the client's family as well creates a whole comprehensive plan for us to, take care of 3 people, probably more than is the industry standard, I would say.
No, 100%. So look, if you guys that are listening are out there, if you yourself, or a loved one is struggling, be sure to connect, reach out, take advantage of this amazing opportunity. Because these are great scholarships, and I'm stoked that we got 3. I mean, when we get one, we take full advantage of it. When we give one away, and a lot of people reach out, and this is great. We're getting more and more, and we're going to be able to help more and more people. So be sure and check that out. Great things that the foundation is doing. Very excited about that. In general, how you been, man? You doing good?
Good. We've been real busy. We got a lot of events. Been attending a bunch of local events as well as some outside of our state here. We've got the West Coast Symposium coming up that we'll be attending next week, and also CCAP in October. So I'm doing great. Foundation's busy. I know you've been busy. We're all running around in opposite directions, making sure everything is buttoned down and because I know the individual that we have on here and the guests that we're bringing on today, somebody actually met at one of these events. But before we talk about that, one other thing we're looking at doing for the foundation is really bringing on somebody on the phone side. So when people are struggling, we'll actually have a live LMFT or a KDAC 2 or 3. We're in the process of deciding what that's going to look like. So if you or a loved one or a family member is struggling and wanting to get insight, direction, and guidance, we will be able to have a phone number that you can call and actually have live communication with a certified professional Monday through Friday. So that's something that we're working on. That's what I'm really stoked on, is because so many people reach out, and it's a lot easier when you have somebody to talk to versus trying to communicate with a computer or emails and things like that. So a lot of cool things going on, man. But without further ado, I know we got a great guest on the other end. Why don't you bring her on? Yeah. So earlier this month, I got to participate and attend a mental health conference, mainly for adolescents around suicide and suicidal ideations. And I got to attend it with one of our ambassadors, Cammie Jelaine. Shout out to her for coming down from LA. But met this wonderful person that we brought on as our guest. She goes by DesiGirl. First time, I think, on this show that we've had a pseudonym too, I believe, right? Doing a lot of firsts, a lot of big things this week. But yeah, I mean, I think it's very apparent in the current world we're living in. Strong mental health is more important, more now than ever. From Simone Biles with the Olympics to a bunch of musical artists stepping forward, talking about their mental health. So we're very pleased to bring on a mental health influencer and co-founder of the Silent Warrior Chronicles. So I'd like to introduce DesiGirl. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm super excited.
We're stoked you're here.
Yeah, so her and we connected at the Mission Viejo event. She was interested in our foundation. I believe you were there with your husband, boyfriend, fiance. Hopefully I'm not blowing
my
cover.
Fiance.
He was a great guy. We connected over UC Irvine. We're both alumni of the Anteaters. And I believe he's going back for business or doing something over there again. But We connected about mental health, how there was a huge need. She shared a little bit about what she was doing, and I threw her the invite to come on our podcast. So here she is.
That's what I'm talking about. Well, before we get into that, because I want to hear all about how you got into this space, I have a question for you that I want to know is what did you want to be when you grew up?
I actually wanted to be an actress.
Oh, you did? Talk about that a little more.
So I watched a lot of Bollywood movies growing up, and I was like, I want to be part of that glamorous world. So, I actually did get the opportunity to model briefly. And during that experience, I found how negative it was towards my mental health and my well-being, specifically what I couldn't and could eat, how I dressed, how I walked, how I presented myself. So my parents actually pulled me out and said, no, you're going to college and you're going to find something else to do. So then I'm like, oh, I'll become a lawyer. Did a few classes and I was like, nope, don't like this. And then part of my requisites was to take psychology classes. So I took Psych 101. I was like, oh, this is cool. And then I took cognitive behavioral psychology. And I was like, wow, I love it. And so that's how I got into mental health.
No way. Okay. So going back to the modeling though, you bring up a really interesting piece of that. I mean, because I've been in the entertainment business for many, many years and I experienced it at a very young age. It sounds like you went in or entered into modeling, 16, 17, 18?
Yeah, it was like 16, 17. Yeah.
And did you notice that negative impact on you immediately? Or was it something that you got immersed into and then over time, you're like after a few months or a year, what did that look like?
So I didn't get to do any jobs. I went to a lot of auditions and did a lot of competitions. Then that I kept winning. Kind of the backstory, some lady came up to me in Macy's and said, you're super exotic and you're super pretty and you'd make a great model. And told me there's this competition and if you win this contract with this agency. So I went on, I won. So huge self-esteem booster for me there. And I'm like, yay, I'm pretty. And
right.
They sent me to modeling school where I guess they teach you like how to walk, how to dress, how to take pictures and all that. And that's where I had started seeing, initially they're like, you're so pretty, you're so exotic, like you're the perfect height, you're the perfect weight. And then that all was taken back, like, oh, maybe you could lose some weight here, or, your waist is a little too wide. Let's make it smaller by doing this. How I walked, my hair, my skin tone, just little things they started nitpicking. And at 16, 17, I was still like, oh, it's okay. I'll do it. I'll change it. It's fine. If that gets me to become famous, then sure. It took my parents being like, no, she's pretty, she's natural. We're not doing any of that. So they pulled me out and I was really upset initially. But I'm glad I got out because I can see it now. Angelina Jolie is someone who we've talked about on our platform, and she had a very similar experience as myself. And now she's dealing with an eating disorder. And I couldn't imagine had I stuck it through what that would have caused my mental health to be like today.
So would you say some of all that you experienced correlated into, you finding your space into the mental health field? I mean, I know your parents you went to the law school, we were going to be a lawyer, and you kind of dipped out of that after you didn't like that. And then you went and took some psychology classes. And I know you were in that, but was some of your own personal experience, some of the motivation for you wanting to get into it?
Yeah. So from childhood, I was described as a crybaby. I was the kid that cried until class got out. My parents got called and said, your daughter won't stop crying. Come pick her up. And there was this anxiety. Like I was constantly always worried and I was constantly thinking doom is going to happen. And so when I went to college, I started learning what that doom and that crybaby and, this constant worry was. It was anxiety. I was experiencing anxiety. And I realized like how many other girls like myself or how many other, South Asians go through this, like where their parents tell you, oh, like stop stressing out. It's just not a big deal. And in actuality, I don't know how to not stress. Like when I'm not stressed out, I start stressing out because I'm not stressing out.
So how old were you when you were experiencing that?
Yeah. So I had separation anxiety disorder at age 5. So I could not be away from my parents for a very long period of time. I would just panic. And then I had an amazing kindergarten teacher who kind of taught me how to know, okay, my parents are okay. So we had like a whole system where my parents actually sat with me during class time. And then when the first like recess or snack time started, they would leave. They'd be like, okay, so it's bye time. And then in 4 hours, your parents are going to come get you. And then
what created the separation and anxiety though? Were you able to identify that?
I have no idea. I actually reconnected with my kindergarten teacher, and she's the one that's telling me all this. Like, she's like, you would just cry and cry. I got certificates for every day I didn't cry. It's really sad, but I would get a certificate for that.
This is great. I mean, I'm interested in, because I have young kids now too. And I think this is just, it's as a parent, you want to learn more and more around this, but I've never heard of that term. I was going to say, Alex sounds like you when we were in preschool, bro. but no, I'm just kidding. It was actually probably me, because he actually would offer me Cheetos and stuff. But so keep going though. So after so that was when you were about 5-6 years old, and then did that progress all the way through high school?
Yeah, so the crying stopped. I still cried a lot over like little things, but I was able to go to school and not panic. But I wasn't a very good student because I was so preoccupied with all these thoughts. Like, oh my gosh, like someone slammed I remember in high school, my classroom was right by the lockers, and someone would slam the lockers, and my thought automatically would go that it was a gunshot. And I've never been in any, environment where there's guns. So like there was no reason for me to think that first. But yeah, all through school, my anxiety literally took over. I barely passed school, quite honestly.
Do you think that there may have been an incident that may have been traumatic for you that you may not remember? Because, and you connecting or reconnecting with your kindergarten teacher and her bringing forward that you would cry all the time. I don't know if you were able to recall that vividly or whatnot, but I'm wondering if there maybe was an incident that had happened that you might not remember, but I know one of Jason's favorite books, Your Body Keeps the Score, right? It might be one of those things that's bubbling up to the surface that cognitively you don't know what's happening, but your body's reacting because of that trauma.
I do. I think there's something that had happened. My parents said like, you had a good childhood. There was no trauma. There's no issues. So there's nothing that anyone can really pinpoint, like this is what happened and that's what led to the anxiety. But I know my anxiety has kind of like transformed as I've gotten older. I'm engaged. And so I remember my fiance going on trips, and I'd be like, okay, so if you don't call by this time, I'm going to call the hotel, or I'm going to call the cops because you didn't check in, you're dead. So, my anxiety is still it's really exciting. We have a whole system.
It sounds like a lot of, is it also, when you've talked about this, because it seems like, and as you're getting educated around this, does some of this fall under OCD as well?
It doesn't, because it's not like a schedule that I have to have. I just need to know, okay, so you're okay, fine. Like, it's kind of something that helps me target my negative thoughts that I have, that this person's dead, or this person ran away, or no one's going to pick me up. Or like one other thing is I don't let other people drive. I always drive myself, with my fear someone's going to leave me there. Because if I say the wrong thing, they're going to be like, okay, I'm just going to leave you here. And I've never been left before. So my anxiety stems from something. I've never figured out what it is, but it's just gotten worse over the years.
That's a funny, or not funny, but that's an interesting notion about you driving yourself. Because I'm almost the same way. I tend to prefer driving myself, other than being with Jason. I always prefer to drive myself, but not because I'm worried about being left somewhere. I'm worried about being stuck somewhere. Like, I know Jason's probably in a similar boat, but if you're in a place that you want to eject and you want to get out of there, and you're not comfortable or you're not having a good time, I want to have the ability to leave. I don't want to be held hostage there. I don't know if there's any sort of similarity in that mindset, because for me, it does sometimes pan out into an anxiety that I have to, be aware that I don't need to freak out. It's only a little bit longer. Now I'm staring at the clock, but at least I've calmed myself down a little bit. So I wonder if there's any sort of similarity or crossover there.
Seems like it's a lot deeper than that to some degree. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I think it's more than that. I've, like when I did meet my fiance, I didn't let him drive me anywhere. Like I would meet him places, even if it was like walking distance, like that's okay. I'll walk myself. Like you don't need to come with me, even if it's like 12 o'clock at night. But It's a fear. I have a fear and I just don't know what that fear stems from. And I try to, as now a clinical social worker, I try to be like, okay, girl, what do you tell your patients when they're dealing with this? And I try to challenge those thoughts and, I play Law and Order literally in my head. I'm like, okay, so what's the evidence of this? But let me now contradict the evidence. And I go back and forth and I miss life because I'm sitting here trying to challenge a thought that is consuming me right now.
I'd be curious to hear is one is how did your fiance respond to this when you guys first met? And two, what are some of those tools that you utilize to navigate when you're in that headspace to get out?
So when he first initially realized it, he thought I was very clingy and he was like, "You're very clingy." And I was like, it's not clinginess, really. I don't. And so, I explained to him, I'm like, quite honestly, I keep you arm's length. I don't let you in all the way. And once he kind of figured out what was going on, because he actually took some psych classes and oh, that doesn't make sense. Why you behave the way you do now. So he was pretty, good with it. He had to learn to communicate a little differently than he was used to. Hanging up the phone was not working for us because I would just keep calling and calling okay, can you finish your thought and let me know if we're breaking up or not? Because I need to know. Right. But, so he's done a really good job of learning how to communicate with me. And then also I've learned to trust him and trust that, okay, when he hangs up the phone, it could be that his phone died or it could be that there's bad signal. And I've learned to kind of trust him. But then if it was a complete stranger, I'd still be up the wazoo again. Why'd you hang up on me? What happened? What did I say? I would lose it with that person.
Wow. And so have you seen and gotten, besides obviously you're doing your classes and getting educated on all this stuff, but did you ever seek professional help for that?
I did not, just because the stigma in South Asian culture. But one thing that I did do was my professors kind of helped me. So I guess I did get help. My professors would help me. And we would kind of talk about, okay, well, why are these thoughts coming? Why do you jump from 0 to 100 so quickly? Why aren't we at 0 and 30? So I learned a lot of skills from my psych professors. And then when I went to grad school, my advisor did an amazing job. I swear we had weekly sessions. She's so this week, we're going to talk about how you lost your in class because the assignment wasn't due when you told it was due. Right.
So can you talk about the stigma but you're talking about the stigma that's in the South, I think you said the South Asian culture, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my family's from India. And so there's this, I guess, persona that you have to be perfect. You have to be 100 at all times. There's no such thing as being 99%. And when someone says, oh, I'm dealing with depression, anxiety, PTSD, schizophrenia, they're automatically written off as crazy. And, they go to a temple and they bathe them in milk and all these weird rituals. Or you're possessed by this dead relative that's taking vengeance from 30 years ago or something. So it was always this constant hush, hush and trying to make me stronger and saying, okay, stop crying, stop thinking like this, just go 0 to 100, just keep it together. I was never told, okay, let's go figure out what's going on. And that's why, when you ask the question, is there something that triggered it when I was younger? I don't think anybody would even know if there was because the goal was to keep me 100 at all times.
Now knowing what you know, would you have wished that you'd seeked help?
Oh, definitely. As an adult, my anxiety's gotten worse now as an adult. And I'm literally doing therapy on myself on the daily because I'm afraid if I go to someone else, and I've tried, I've sought out help and I'm like, yeah, you didn't say this correctly though. Let me tell you how you're supposed to do this because I work in the field. So it's really hard to get therapy now because I know what the other side is like.
Understood. And so what are some of these tools that what are, if people are again experiencing what you're experiencing with the, the inability of being able to disconnect or going from 0 to 100 or, just kind of that control fallacy, if you will, right? Or these other elements that you are experiencing, what are some of the tools that you use to break out of them? Or are you still in the process of discovering those?
I'm still in the process of discovering them. I actually was in a car accident recently. So I have now a TBI, which plays a role in my anxiety and kind of my cognitive skills. But one thing that I figured out is meditation. So I wake up and meditate for 15 minutes and then I end my day with meditation. And that's the time where I literally tell Mr. Anxiety, that's what I call it. Mr. Anxiety, go. I need me time. And I sit there and I play music. I crank up the AC and I just lay there and just enjoy the cold breeze. I'm a huge winter fan. So like I just pretend like I'm in the Swiss Alps and I'm just relaxing.
I like it.
And that's really helped my anxiety. Yeah, it's really helped. Like I don't wake up so anxious. But when I am anxious, I question it. Okay, so what proof do you have? What proof do you have that this is going to happen? Why are you thinking like this? And most of the time it's like, I don't have any proof. I just thought of it. And then I'm like, well, then you can't stress about it.
Wow. Sounds like a very logical approach. Now, based on doing it, obviously you're in the field, so you're, I would suggest more of an expert than I am, but how does that actually, I mean, is it successful for you more often than not? Or do you constantly find yourself like battling between the difference of logic and emotion? Because I mean, for me personally, like, yeah, I can have all the logic in my head, but if I am emotionally messed up, I will fabricate and manufacture any demons to break through that logic. It doesn't matter. You know, like if I am emotionally destroyed, I could be believing that the sky is green and it wouldn't matter that all the science is out there. So how do you manage the flow from logic to emotion and vice versa?
So when I'm emotional, that's when my support system has to walk in and kind of help me do it. Like my fiance does a really good job. Okay, I understand you're really upset about this. So, but talk to me. Like, what are the thoughts that you're having in your head? Tell me, share them with me so I can debunk them for you. So my support system does it plays a huge role. And the other thing, sometimes I'm like, I'm just exhausted. Today is just the day that you're going to win and I'm going to bed and tomorrow's a new day and we'll figure it out tomorrow. So I've kind of had to say, look, you just got to put your hands up, let it win and call it a day.
And again, sorry to hear about your car accident. I know we're hopping back and forth because I think we're getting educated here, right? I mean, I've interviewed and talked to a lot of people, and I've never really. This falls under a lot of different areas of things that I've talked about, but not this specifically. So it's fascinating to me. And with the TBI, did that make things worse? I mean, maybe that's a stupid question, but I mean, did it heighten the anxiety? Did it, did it make the paranoia worse? I mean, or did it stay the same?
And just real quick for our listeners, what does TBI stand for?
Traumatic brain injury. We won't know the true damage of my TBI till a year from the accident. I guess that's like how long it takes to see if your brain healed. As for my anxiety, I don't think my anxiety is as bad as it was prior to the accident. However, I was working prior to the accident, and I think my job is very stressful. So I would have to say my anxiety hasn't gotten worse, but I've also started taking CBD, which has helped me immensely because I'm a lot more calmer and I'm more rational. I feel like I've become a lot more rational since I started CBD.
No, got it. And so when you're working now, being a clinical social worker, right? You've touched on this a little bit. So being a clinical social worker and going through this, how do you separate it when you're working with somebody and not allow your own thought processes and the anxiety to kick up when you're working with somebody else? How do you separate that?
Funny enough, Mr. Anxiety stays at the door. Like the moment I walk into the unit, I have no anxiety. I have nothing. Like I am 100% a clinician. I've never had my mentals really interfere with my job. But once COVID is when I did start to see that my anxiety was full-fledged with me 24/7.
Wow. So it sounds like you're able to really compartmentalize like your Mr. Anxiety versus when you'd go into work, you're able to kind of separate those two. But COVID happened, right? And they've intermeshed. Is there coping mechanisms or things that you've taken away to help before you enter into the building now?
One thing I've noticed is I think I've burned myself to the end. I didn't stop myself and said, look, I think you're at a breaking point now. You need to stop. You need to take a break, take a day off or whatever. My car accident happened towards the end of last year. So I haven't gone back since the end of last year.
Right.
And I have noticed a drastic decrease in my anxiety since then. So I've started to believe that my work is causing a lot of my anxiety. I just learned to keep it on the DL when I was at work. And the moment I left work was when it was out.
So suppressing it and come back to haunt you. But it's what I'm hearing you say, though. I mean, unfortunately, a very tragic incident had to happen, but it also disrupted the process for you to be able to take care of yourself, right?
Yeah.
Wow. So where are you going from here? You know, so I mean, obviously you're dealing with the TBI, you're dealing with your own anxiety, you're engaged. What are the next steps for you?
So I am waiting to get licensed so I could possibly do private practice.
Awesome.
And I've been working on Silent Warrior Chronicles, which I started last year, August with my best friend, Lady DMC. So I'm hoping to make Silent Warrior Chronicles a big success.
Tell us what that is.
So it's a mental health blog and podcast. We started it as a blog where my best friend Lady DMC and I chatted about our own mental health journey. And then it turned from one post to a post every single day. So we actually have on Mondays is called Charla con Lady DMC, which Lady DMC, she speaks Spanish fluently and she talks about mental health in Spanish. On Tuesdays, it's Talk With Us Tuesdays, which is our podcast. Our first season, we chatted about our personal journey, kind of. We didn't know what we were doing really in the podcasting world, so it's a kind of a hot mess, like I like to say.
Right, it's all good.
But our current season 2, we are talking about pop culture and Hollywood mental health. So we've talked about Britney Spears, Angelina Jolie, the Olympics, Selena, the modeling industry. We talked more about my modeling experience. We're talking about Slenderman, so... Wednesdays, we do the social workers in, and that's my segment where I kind of educate people with the professional route. Lady DMC is not a professional. She's just a mental health warrior. So Wednesdays are dedicated to me kind of talking about clinical terms and my experience as a social worker. Right now, we're talking about National Recovery Month. So I've talked about the stages of change. We've talked about the different drugs and how co-occurring disorder plays out. We've talked about National Suicide Prevention Week. And then on Thursdays is our Business Thursday, so we promote businesses in the community. Fridays is Mental Health 101, so Lady DMC and I talk about different mental health topics. I try to not be the professional in that sense. I talk from the warrior sense, but that's really hard to do because what I like to say, it's like being like the Little Mermaid. I want to be part of people's world that don't know the DSM-5, and that's hard to do. So Fridays are a challenge for me not to put the DSM in there. But that's our goal, is for us to talk like normal people.
I like it.
Saturdays, we have our newspapers, the Silent Warrior Chronicles news. So we talk about what's been going on in the world, in Silent Warrior Chronicles world. And then Sundays, Self-Care Sunday. So we talk about our favorite self-care activities.
I love it.
Got a whole week's worth of activity.
You're busy, man. How are you going to go back to work with that? That's a full-time gig. And some.
I don't know. That's what I'm saying.
Well,
we have a lot going on.
You're busy. Well, I think this was really cool, and I really appreciate you being so open and vulnerable and transparent about your journey and how you got into the space that you got in, but also how you've taken some of your personal struggles and utilized that as something that you're wanting to help others with. I think that's very commendable and very it's awesome. But if you were going to leave our listeners with one action for the day, what would it be?
Take care of yourself. Listen to your body. When your body says stop. Don't push it, because you're going to burn yourself to the end. And it's even harder to get up from there.
So on that, I know you mentioned that Sunday is your self-care Sunday, and that was yesterday, but what can you give our listeners your favorite self-care tip?
Do something fun where there's no stress, no worry. Just do something where you're like, okay, I felt like I was 10 years old again or 5 years old again, and feel that weight lift off of you and say, okay, I feel much better. I'm ready to tackle on everything.
That's awesome. Well, we're running out of time here today. I want to thank you again for coming on. But before we sign off here, I'd love to know where can our viewers or listeners find out more about you or the Silent Warrior Chronicles?
So we have social media. Our Instagram handle is at Silent Warrior Chronicles. And then our Facebook is Silent Warrior Chronicles. And then we have a website with all of our blogs and all of our posts, which is www.silentwarriorchronicles.net.
Love it. Also, guys, please do us a huge favor and subscribe to the podcast on whichever platform you are listening to. Please give us a 5-star rating. It really helps us on the back end and move up the podcast charts. It's really appreciated. As well, we also have a channel on YouTube. So please like, subscribe, and comment. Let us know if there's things that you want to hear about, and we'll be sure to try to get to those. So thanks again, and we appreciate you having you on. And Alex, you have a wonderful day. Ryan, you have a good day.
Thank you, everybody. And thank you again, DesiGirl.
Sounds good. Thank you.